We are in the business of making gold. The gold we give you here in Morning at NTV is in form of information, but my next guests deal with it on a direct basis. Our business update is giving you a look into the artisanal and small-scale miners' potential here in Uganda. I am Priscilla Regina Dalwoga, pleased to be in your company. Now, back in 2022, Uganda did pass the new mining and minerals law, which for the first time integrated regulations governing artisanal and small-scale mining. The new law did include provisions to ensure responsible mining practices, including health and safety, gender equality, as well as environmental protection. Now, the mining and mineral sector, including artisanal gold mining, is a critical driver of economic growth for Uganda. When we look at the fiscal year 2022-2023, mining did contribute 1.9% of Uganda's gross domestic product, up from 1.4%, which was the previous year. This is at least a contribution of $850 million in production value to Uganda's economy. If integrated into the national economic status and also statistics, Uganda's GDP would actually grow by an additional 1.3%, and this is according to the Uganda Bureau of Statistics. The mining and quarrying industry directly does employ close to hundreds of thousands of people, 360,000 and counting, and stakeholders have come up with new ways and a new initiative to help curb some of the challenges within the sector. With me, I do have the Chairperson Governing Council, that is the Uganda Chamber of Mines and Minerals, Mr. Aggrey Ashaba. We also are joined by the Project Manager, PlanetGold Uganda, Lynn Gitu, to speak to us about the artisanal and small-scale mining in Uganda in line with the law, what the prospects are, the opportunities, the challenges, but also at the end of the day, how much gold we can make as a country. I will allow them their salutations, starting with the chairman. Good morning to you.
Thank you very much, Priscilla, and a good morning. Happy to be here. The 30-day campaign that we are running currently as the Uganda Chamber of Mines and Petroleum is largely to spotlight the mineral sector. We've traditionally done most of the work on the petroleum side. We've done about 3 campaigns, which we call the 90 days of oil and gas. But because we believe that we have kicked that can down the road, because petroleum is now already in place, things are happening, we believe we need now to change the emphasis or our orientation towards minerals. Minerals have also been largely exploited in Uganda by artisanal miners. But maybe just to frame the conversation, what is an artisanal miner? An artisanal miner is the person who does mining under rudimentary methods. Hand tools, no technologies, no capital. It's basically the people who do the normal things. If you've looked at, say, if you went to Acholi quarters or any quarry anywhere in Uganda, you'll find young girls, women and kids hammering the stones. Yeah. So those are already artisanal miners. Then there's the gold perspective. But we also believe that through these 30 days, we can be able to spotlight the mineral potential of the country. This campaign started on the 2nd of September, and it's a lead up to the Mineral Wealth Conference that we shall be having between 1st and 2nd of October this year.
We'll get into the details of that. Lynn Gitu, let's talk about PlanetGold Uganda, and good morning to you.
Good morning, Priscilla. Pleasure to be here, and a good morning to our viewers. PlanetGold Uganda is part of a global program that is focused on eliminating the use of mercury in the artisanal and small-scale gold mining sector. Mercury is a toxic chemical that artisanal and small-scale miners use to process their gold. So once research had been done and studies have been done to discover how detrimental mercury is to health and to the environment, the Global Environment Facility, which is a global fund, put together resources and provided them to United Nations Environment Program and created this PlanetGold program. It's in 23 countries around the world, and Uganda and Kenya are the East African countries that are part of this program.
Okay, all right. Why did Uganda qualify to be a part of this program?
Uganda qualified because of the extent of artisanal and small-scale gold mining within the country. The country alone has about 400,000 to 600,000 miners as the artisanal small-scale mining sector. But gold alone accounts for close to 60,000 of those miners. And we also have good deposits of gold. I can't say it as a geologist to quantify, but fairly good deposits, but also our proximity to the Democratic Republic of Congo and South Sudan that also have substantial amounts of gold.
Okay. Yeah. Mr. Ashaba, this country is a country of many minerals, but when it comes to the artisan small scale side of it, which particular minerals do dominate?
Well, in terms of value, I think gold would be number one, but in terms of scale, there are things like limestone, there is dimension stones, there is granite, there is the 3Ts, that is tin, tungsten and tantalite, and every other gemstones. All these are done through artisanal mining. Because maybe just to note is artisanal miners, with lack of geology, with lack of data, are the people who actually find these minerals. Because they either are searching for things within their community and environs, and then they start to mine, and then they find to start getting the alluvial gold and things of that nature. And then they are usually what we call the pathfinders for most of the minerals. But obviously the country has gone ahead and done the airborne geological surveys, and they have gotten a few of the anomalies of the different minerals that we have. But most of, in terms of value and in terms of interest, most of it is towards gold. And that's why we have partners like PlanetGold who are helping in making sure that the artisanal practices meet the sustainability threshold. Because where we are, there's a lot of pressure right now in preserving the environment and in making sure that people work in safe environments. And PlanetGold is one of our partners that is leading that conversation. And they're helping in the reduction of the use of mercury. Because mercury is not only toxic to human use, but it's also very toxic to the environment, to the water, to the soil, and it also affects the ability for soils to generate anything around food. And then the water that we drink eventually, because when they are doing most of their processing and purifications, when they use the mercury, it seeps down into the rivers and lakes. So we believe that this conversation that we are having, and with the passing of the law in 2022, because you need to also recall that for the last so many years, is that artisanal mining has been illegal in Uganda. And Uganda Chamber of Mines, with its partners like PlanetGold, UNDP, have been pushing government to legalize artisanal mining. And with the law that was passed in 2022, finally, artisanal miners have been recognized by government, and this has given us now a platform to have this type of conversation. It was impossible then, but right now, it is a conversation we are having, and the reason why we are having this talk now is to see how do we support them to get into the formal business environment, how can they be part of government programs, how can policies and regulations support them, and how can they be able to access capital. But also to protect, because like Lynn has highlighted, out of almost the 360, 400,000 people involved in gold, about 60–70% of those are women and children. So how do we make sure that all these people are protected from the vagaries of the activities that they are doing that are not supported by finance, are not supported by technology, are not supported by government programs.
All right.
So this is the conversation.
It's been 2 years since this was made a law, and it begs the question, what strides have been moved, especially in the protection and the health of women and children, because those seem to take up the biggest number. When we see them on ground, it's really a lot of women and children.
I would say that the way processes work between private sector and government, sometimes it's a slow-moving gravy train. The conversations are on. Right now, there's consultations on what we call the regulations to operationalize the law. And through these, PlanetGold has been a leading partner in engaging most of the artisanal miners and the Ministry of Energy to try and see that these regulations can be able to support the areas where artisanal mining is deficient. And that is access to capital, access to government programs, and then because it was difficult to implement some of these initiatives without a law. It was difficult to implement any of these transformations for an illegal activity, according to the laws in Uganda. So right now, these conversations are happening, and we believe before the end of this year, the regulations will be in place, and when we have those regulations, then some of the things that we intend to bring forward to the conversation, to the table, will start to happen. I'm also glad to say that the Uganda Chamber of Mines and Petroleum has signed an MOU with one of the associations for artisanal mining. And we shall try to use that platform to reach every single person and try to amplify some of the partners that are willing to come on board. For example, a couple of the financing institutions, banks and all these people, who would have wanted to have conversations to provide technologies, to provide working capital, could not do that in the absence of the law because they wouldn't be protected. Right now, they are knocking on the door, but they cannot also progress this conversation until these regulations are in place so that we can have the formalization process moving in the right direction.
Okay. Lynn, he mentioned the magic word there, engagement, and I know that with PlanetGold you have to do a lot of ground engagement with the artisanal people directly, and I know that in as much as you're trying to protect them with the whole, helping them understand the impact of mercury, much as it supports the work that they're doing, but also the hazardous dangers it brings to, personal health, community, and by and large the industry. It begs the question, what have been the realities on ground through these engagements? From that research, what is the mind of this artisanal community, and also what challenges are they facing?
Well, for artisanal and small-scale gold miners, the biggest problem has been the legalization, the illegality of their operations for many years. And so they are generally excited that now finally they are legal to do their work. The other reality is the lack of access to finances or to money, cash, to invest in the business, because mining is a business, even though there are perceptions about it and thinking that miners, especially artisanal miners, are poor people who don't have a lot of knowledge and so on. But they have skill, they are entrepreneurs, they're looking to make money. But one of the biggest issue for them has been the lack of access to finance. The other issue as well, which we can't shy away from talking about, is the issue of child labor, or allowing children to participate in the mining business. Even though the law of Uganda provides for a certain threshold for children, that's people below the age of 18, to do some work, the mining business is very strenuous. Anyone who has seen what a mine site looks like, there are rocks, there are so many hazardous opportunities, there's the mercury piece within the gold sector. So these are some of the realities on the ground. But I would say that there is a bit of expectation, high expectation, that with the new law and with the regulations that are in the process of being passed, their lives can get better, their access to finance and therefore increased incomes in their homes can get better.
Okay. Yeah. All right, Mr. Ashaba, let's come back to the bigger scale. If the artisan and small-scale miner is contributing about 90% to Uganda's mining production, and they're also bringing about 60% of the workforce for Uganda, it begs the question, what is the national contribution to Uganda's coffers?
That's a good question.
Yeah, so a hard one to answer. Yes.
Pardon?
But a good question,
Yeah.
but a hard one to answer.
Not quite.
Yes.
Maybe just to paint a broader picture. The current budget that we are running was destined to produce about 500,000 jobs. However, the economy is producing about 250,000 jobs. The reality, though, is that almost every year we put out about 700,000 Ugandans ready to work. That's a deficit of about 500,000 jobs. Artisanal mining and artisanal and small-scale mining is employing about 600,000 people. So if they get legalized, that already is giving you a fundamental is plugging the gap fundamentally in your job numbers. If you take off probably about 10-20% of those as child labor, you still have about 400,000 people coming into the job market.
Right.
Like you rightly said, artisanal mining, artisanal and small-scale mining contributes about $850 million to the mining economy. But this has not been recognized before. Ideally, if this is taken into account, it would be able to grow our GDP by about 1.3. Currently, mining is contributing about 2.2% of our GDP. So that would take it to about 3.5 if it gets eventually recognized. But we also believe that with the regulations coming into place and the challenges that Lynn has highlighted, access to finance, access to technology, getting them into government programs, trainings, and all these things, they could shoot that contribution from 1.3 to anywhere about 2.5. Our ambition or our aspiration as the Chamber of Mines is to try and grow mining GDP contribution to about 10%. So it would be a fundamental movement in the contribution to GDP for the mining sector. We also believe that while we get the artisanals into formalization, and we've seen in a couple of other countries, is that there's been good synergies between artisanals and large-scale miners. Because what you need to understand also is that when licenses are being issued, usually they're going to issue them with artisanals as sitting tenants, if I may call that, onto those particular parcels of land. Now, the issue before has been that there has been a conflict between the large-scale miner and the artisanal miner on surface rights and on mineral rights. And this has been a huge conversation, and that's why there was mineral police, there were issues around Mubende, and issues around Kasanda, for example, that have been a huge challenge in being able to optimize and maximize the mining potential for those areas. But with this legalization, it means that a large-scale mining operation can actually co-opt or work together with artisanal miners, and we can be able to partake of that benefit as a country. So we think that the 10% GDP contribution would be sufficient to be able to spotlight our mining potential, but eventually to grow and highlight Uganda as a mining destination.
Okay. Thank you so much for painting the ecosystem to us as it should be. But the reality is on the ground that informality of the sector is still by and large a huge challenge. And the fact that there's also minimal economic benefits for the artisan miner is another thing, coupled with the environmental damages that are coming in there on the different tables and rooms that you have to have these conversations in. It poses the question, and I think, Lynn, you can help us speak into this. When we have the implementation of the law, how is it going to be addressing some of these elements of plight?
So the thing about a law is that it's a foundation. So it, as Mr. Ashaba mentioned earlier, before 2022, there was no provision for artisanal and small-scale mining licenses. Now that those licenses exist, there's clarity on who can get this license. There is also clarity on how much can you invest into these different levels of mining business. I believe that is the beginning of solving some of the problems that have always existed within the sector. There will be an opportunity for a group of miners who come together in different ways, as a company, as an association, but most specifically as a cooperative, for them to be able to access finance, to be able to access training that is available from government, from development partners, and so on. And I'll say something about the income status. Artisanal and small-scale mining provides livelihood or household incomes for very many people. Children's school fees is paid, medical bills are paid, people build houses. So it's an ecosystem or an economy that has been ignored for a long time, and yet it's bringing a lot of benefit. But when you bring legality to it, training, technology, exposure, media presence, media understanding, then the prospects are really good.
Okay. Yeah. Mr. Ashaba, the 30 days of mining is something that the Chamber has come up with. What is it seeking to address, and who are the focal target?
So the 30 days of mining is basically one to spotlight our mining potential as a country, but also to bring the conversation to the table. Because largely, especially for the artisanal miners, this is a conversation that has been held in the backrooms because of the illegality of artisanal mining by law. Right now that has been articulated well in the Mining Act of the Mining Law of 2022, we are comfortable having the conversation on platforms like this nature. Two is that the global nature right now of the geopolitical conversation around sustainability between the global north and the global south on what countries must do to preserve the environment is very critical, and would like to have that conversation also articulated very well, especially for the artisanal mining, for the areas you've correctly highlighted. Environmental degradation, working conditions, but also respect for human rights. We'd also like to spotlight the Energy Transition Plan of Uganda, which was an answer to the global conversation around sustainability. This Energy Transition Plan was unveiled by the government of Uganda during the Conference of Parties, normally known as COP28 in Dubai last year. And as a chamber, we are supporting the government in making sure that this conversation is told, and is told in the right way. But also three, to also spotlight the fact that in the energy conversation, we have what we call critical minerals. Critical minerals are those minerals that are going to support the just transition into the sustainability conversation and the energy transition plan. These we already have. We also have companies that have already explored and in the conversation of doing the work that needs to be done, like Renzori Rare Metals, and would like the country to understand that, but also to be able to tell the country that based on what the president's commitment is that value addition should be done in country for the whole value chain of the process. We are saying, how do we link our minerals to our economic ecosystem? For example, if we want to do transmission lines, can we then be able to add value to our copper? If we want to go into mobility, like what Kira Motors is doing, how can we leverage on the critical minerals to support battery manufacturing? If we are going into technology, how can the critical minerals support precision metals, technology, and defense systems? So these are conversations that we'd like to have, as opposed to what companies are doing now is that we're exporting raw materials, then we're importing finished product, then we do semi-assembly of whatever needs to be done in the country. So all these value chains we're trying to critically highlight, and this conversation is going to continue all the way through into our Mineral Wealth Conference, where we shall have a couple of experts and partners like PlanetGold to be able to give us some of these solutions as a country, and the involvement of the Ministry of Energy, which has been a fantastic partner for us over the years, and we hope that this story will be advantageous to all of us as a country, as private sector, as people of Uganda. All
right. When is the Mineral Wealth Conference happening?
So the Mineral Wealth Conference is happening on the 1st and 2nd of October this year. It will be our 13th. And we believe that this time round, because our focus is largely to unlock our mineral potential, to attract investment, to tell our story, but to also make sure that this artisanal conversation is highlighted and brought into formalization. And maybe just to borrow from what Lynn has highlighted, the issue to access to capital is very critical. Before, artisanals couldn't do that because they were illegal. There is no single bank, there is no single financial institution would want to touch them with a 10-foot stick. Right now, these conversations have started. There's knocking on the door, and we think that through the trainings, through the empowerment, through governance systems, through partnerships, through this is going to unlock the artisanal mining space. And maybe just to give a bit of more perspective. So if you have 600,000 artisanals working, and these are conservative numbers, and each one of them is probably making $200, $300 a month, that is about $1.8 million a year, every month, that is coming into the economy as purchasing power. Now, this is something that we cannot ignore as an economy. It is not something that we can do away with. It's a live conversation, and we must be able to support it and actually be able to grow it to greater heights.
Okay, PlanetGold Uganda, ever since you opened the doors to work with especially the artisan small-scale miner, what have been the benefits, one to the miner, directly to the community, but also to the economy and the mining industry by and large?
So technically, the project began at the beginning of 2023, the beginning of last year. The initial processes of inception began at the end of 2022. So I would say, we can say maybe a year and a half. So for the year and a half, one thing that we have seen is an increase in understanding of the value of the work that these miners do. Initially, they did not think about it as a business. They thought about it as just I guess a livelihood. You just do it, you make a small amount of money, and then you move on. But beginning to interact with them and make it clear to them that this is a business that you can grow, that you can invest in, that you can create circles of saving money together and be able to answer livelihood needs, but also plow back into the business. We've seen a growth in understanding and therefore a willingness to support the work of the project. There is also an understanding of the danger of mercury, and we've seen some sites begin to put their own regulation within the sites to say no more use of mercury. They don't allow gold traders to provide the mercury to them. And so they're baby steps. It's only been a year or so, a year and a half, but we can see good progress coming ahead.
Okay. Yeah. Speaking of coming ahead, the Mineral Wealth Conference, for you as a partner, what objectives do you hope to hit at this conference?
The main thing we want to hit is exposure. The exposure of how important artisanal and small-scale mining is to the sector, to the economic development of the country. We want people to know that these are not backwater people that should be shunned, that should be kicked out of communities, but there are people who are contributing to not just to their local communities, but to the country as a whole economically. We want them to be understood better. We want media especially to begin to write stories that are positive, that are encouraging. There are many women, for example, within the artisanal and small-scale gold mining sector who are making good money. They're supporting their families. They are growing themselves. They're real entrepreneurs. They make upwards of 200 million shillings a month. There are many good stories. So for us, the Mineral Wealth Conference is an opportunity to expose how positive artisanal and small-scale mining is.
Okay. Yeah. Is that positivity going to be shedding specific light to the women in the industry?
Yeah, it's a two-day conference, and that's one of the areas that we shall be tackling, but there are a couple of others. We'll be talking about financing, we'll be talking about critical minerals, we'll be talking about ESG, we'll be talking about the current investors that are in the country, for example, Aggrey, who are already planning to have their launch of their plant by end of this year. They just finally, right now, finalizing the refinery process, and it's a huge, one of the largest gold mines that will be coming online in Uganda. And you see, this is a good conversation for us, because when you're speaking about global capital coming or being attracted into the country, you need to have positive stories, and like Lynn highlighted. So the issue, or rather the fundamental obligation of every single Ugandan now, is to be able to champion and to support what we're trying to do. Because when we tell the positive stories, it gives a positive vibe to global capital that their money is safe and there's something or action happening in the country. It's also important that when you have a plant like Aggrey coming online, then people begin to trust that, oh, this is a good mining destination, and money can follow that conversation. We'll be speaking about things to do with the ecosystem, like I highlighted, the value chains, and the opportunities for private sector that are not exactly doing the mining business, but things like transporters, things like service providers, financial institutions, insurance companies, media, every single different kind of activity that can be plugged into the mining value chain. So this is what we're trying to do, and to tell Ugandans that mining is another good frontier for development. It's another good frontier as an opportunity for people to actually be able to do work, not just in employment, but also in providing goods and services, in actually having investment. And a couple of Ugandans have different types of licenses. And right now the licensing regime has been opened up with a new law. Also, like Lynn highlighted, you have artisanal licenses, you have different types of licenses. So you can enter at whatever stage you believe you're able to. Yes, they are the large-scale mining operations where the capital is top end, but there are also those that can be done by Ugandans, and you start, and then you can leverage your advantage of being Ugandan to get partnerships to be able to scale. So that is the conversation we'd like to have, and the primary concern for the chamber is largely that mining has not been on the decision tables of the different players. You see, when we are doing, governments react to two areas from my experience. One is under pressure, and that is by activists and all these other issues, and yes, disasters happening, but also two is lobbying. Now, what we do as Uganda Chamber of Mines and Petroleum is we advocate, protect, and promote the sector. So what we are doing right now is advocating for it, doing the publicity, so that even the person who is sitting in immigration, for example, will understand the value of mining, so that if someone is applying for a work permit to come and do geological work, it is a decision for them. If, for example, someone who is working at a hospital knows that there is a mining operation in this area, and these are the type of cases they actually usually suffer, they will be able to support. If it's a news reporter, if it's media, if it's any type of profession or support service, we need to work in unison to be able to support the conversation, because it brings huge benefits to the economy. All of us as Ugandans will be able to benefit from it, whether we are involved in the sector or not. And I'll give an example with petroleum. So many people have been saying that I'm not involved in oil and gas, this money we don't see it, but I tell them that you see the money on a daily basis. How do you see the money? If I'm employed by an oil and gas company, I'll go to work in Bulisa, I'll get paid. But in the evening, I am in, what's it called? Silo, that place in Bandari. I'm buying beers. But this is money that I've obtained from
oil and gas
in Bulisa. And that beer, neighbor is benefiting. But the farmer who is doing the...
Who's providing the
sorghum is also benefiting. So it's a cyclic conversation. It's the same thing with mining. For example, hotels. We're doing our mining conference at the Serena here. Serena is not involved in mining space, but we'll be spending money there. So they're already benefiting, including all the other people who will be in the gig economy, the guys that we shall be employing on that particular day, the food suppliers, the service providers, every single person. Yet, we are not yet getting the full spectrum of the benefits from the mining sector. So, what I'm trying to say is that the Chamber of Mines and Petroleum would like to call on every single Ugandan to be able to tell our story, tell it in a good way, factual, but it should be positive, because at the end of the day, all of us benefit from a vibrant industry.
Okay, all right. And so as we wrap up on the conference and the 30 days that are building up to the conference, first in the 30 days, how are you practically doing it? And then for the conference, is it exclusive or inclusive, and how do people get to participate?
So for the 30 days, we are doing kind of like a hybrid. So we have media interviews like this one, we have press releases, we are running our social media platforms, and we have different people speaking about different conversations in the 30 days to the lead up or to the oil and gas conversation. So this is already ongoing. It started on the 2nd, where we had a press conference, and we're trying to tell our story, or to tell the story of the mining opportunity in Uganda. As for the conference, the conference is not real exclusive, but there's a small fee attached. You can contact the Uganda Chamber of Mines and Petroleum at Amber House, but also through our social media platforms, to see or to understand how you can be part of the conversation. There will be obviously invited guests, mostly from the ministry and government, because as Uganda Chamber of Mines, being a private sector lobby entity, is that we work hand in glove with the government, so that they meet their aspirations as a state, but also private sector can be able to benefit from this conversation, and obviously the people of Uganda. So this will be happening. Please contact Uganda Chamber of Mines and Petroleum through our different social media platforms, through our office at the Amber House, next to or rather with the Ministry of Energy, and we'll be able to support you, to tell you how this can be happening. Or you can come, we'll be having prior an office 2-3 days before, between the 28th and 29th at the Serena here. Please come through, and you'll have as much information as possible for you to take part of the conversation. Okay.
As they say, ladies first, but also ladies last. Lynn, what are the projected futuristic opportunities that lie, especially in the formalization of the artisan small-scale mining?
I love that we're ending at that point, because formalization is about putting your things in order. And so for the artisanal and small-scale mining sector, formalization presents an opportunity for reduction of informality. So you stop doing things in an ad hoc way. It presents an opportunity for income security, because as you're working in a legal and a formal way, you're able to put together the monies in the best way possible. It provides a platform for environmental protection. We've spoken about mercury and its danger. Once you are together in a group, together in a cooperative, I want to raise the sound on the issue of cooperatives for mining. We've seen the benefit that has come from cooperatives within the farming sector, the agricultural sector, and want to encourage that within the mining sector. Once you are in a cooperative, it provides an opportunity for stability and social cohesion, because as you're working together, you have consideration of your community, you have consideration of the children that are being raised within that community, you have opportunities for employment and so on. And so we want to encourage artisanal and small-scale miners to come together, to stop working alone, stop working in silos.
All right. Yeah. Lynn Gitu, Project Manager, PlanetGold Uganda, thank you so much for your 2 cents to this discussion and your contribution in partnership to the mining industry in Uganda. Mr. Aggrey Ashaba, Chairperson for the Governing Council that is the Uganda Chamber of Mines and Petroleum. Equally, thank you so much for your endless efforts to improve the sector by and large, and also improving our socio-economic development agenda as Uganda, especially with the National Development Plan, for which you need to get accustomed to. That brings us to the end of this conversation. Morning at NTV does continue. We now turn our attention to